to its knees, should see its Director General and Head of News sacked, and lead to a massive public apology to us all. A leaked dossier revealed the world, and the powers that be ignored it, covered it up, and allowed it to continue. On BBC Arabic, they platformed Samer El-Zainan 244 times between November 2023 and April 2025. Now, he posted on social media, apparently, that Jews should be burnt like Hitler did. They platformed Ahmad Al-Ajar, who described Jews as, quotes, devils and Israelis as less than human. He was on 522 times during the same period. The BBC failed to mention that many Palestinian prisoners were actually guilty of terror crimes, including bombings and knife attacks. It gave unjustifiable weight to Hamas's claims about the death toll in Gaza. They did a report about a female sex slave being released from Gaza, then ran a 600-word statement from Hamas calling her a liar. It incorrectly claimed the International Court of Justice had ruled that genocide was taking place. Newsnight highlighted claims that thousands of babies were on the brink of starvation in Gaza, that it already knew to be false. And that is the key point there, that they already knew to be false claims. BBC Arabic is partly funded by our Foreign Office, so it's your money. The Foreign Office should withdraw funding and demand a refund right now. The BBC, through the independent production company it used, also stands accused of paying Hamas for this documentary that they had to take off air because the boy here just happens to be the son of a Hamas government minister.
Good morning. You all right? Have you ever wondered what you'd do if your world was destroyed?
Last night, it was revealed that BBC Panorama appeared to doctor a speech by President Trump to make it seem like he instigated riots.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
But this is the worst bit. So this leaked report that is just coming to light now reveals how, having made such serious and misleading journalistic errors, BBC executives chose to hide them from the public rather than correct the record. In doing so, they appear to have deliberately chosen to mislead licence fee payers. And on that note, look what I received in the post today. There you go. So if you don't want to pay for this extreme level of indoctrination, lies, deceit and propaganda, they threaten to send round the heavies for you. They will knock on your front door any time of the morning, afternoon or evening. If they find that you've been watching TV, they can interview you under caution, fine you £1,000 plus legal costs, criminalise you and then force you to pay for a licence fee. What was announced on Monday? Oh, they are expected to hike the price of the TV licence above £180 for the first time ever. Thank you, BBC. Taxpayers have to pay for the privilege of being indoctrinated by BBC bias. I mean, the leaked document is a huge scandal. Heads must roll, but it's just the latest in a long line of huge BBC scandals.
In April and June 2024, the BBC published 2 stories about the discovery of mass graves at Al-Nasser and Al-Shifa hospitals in Gaza. According to the internal BBC dossier, the article strongly implied that Israeli forces had buried bodies at both sites prior to withdrawing from the area. The articles also mentioned alleged evidence of war crimes, including bodies found with their hands tied and gunshot wounds to their heads. But the BBC's own editorial standards committee was told that this narrative was wrong. The memo says that the most likely explanation is that the mass graves were dug by Palestinians themselves and the people buried there had died or been killed prior to the arrival of the Israeli ground forces. So, the BBC made a mistake. Well, perhaps. But the committee argues that the broadcaster knew that Palestinians were burying their dead at these sites before the Israeli raids. Several months earlier, the BBC itself reported on Palestinians digging mass graves, and geolocation clearly places the two burial sites in roughly the same area. Now, whatever your personal views may be on the actions of Israel in Gaza, implying a country committed war crimes when there is evidence to the contrary has serious ramifications, not least because it could erode the credibility of genuine war crime claims at a later date. And that isn't all the former committee member said. They also raised serious concerns about differences in the way stories were reported on the BBC News English website and on BBC Arabic. Examples included this report about a Yazidi woman who was rescued by Israel after a decade in ISIS captivity. She was first kidnapped at the age of 11 in Iraq, and then she was later moved to Gaza. She was then freed by Israel last year and reunited with her family. But the committee noted stark differences in the way the story was promoted across the two BBC websites, not least the BBC Arabic headline, with Hamas's rebuttal placed centre stage despite the story being verified by Israeli, Iraqi and US officials. In fact, nearly 600 words out of the 1,000 words of the BBC Arabic story were taken up by a Hamas statement challenging Israel's version of events, a statement which didn't appear on the English version at all. And there's more. The dossier also reveals that BBC Arabic and BBC Gaza Today repeatedly platformed 3 individuals with anti-Semitic and pro-Hamas views. First, Ahmed Kanan, who described a gunman who killed 4 civilians and an Israeli police officer as a hero. Next, Samar al-Zanan, who suggested Jews should be burned as Hitler did. And finally, Ahmed Alaga, who described Israelis as less than human and said Jews were devils. All 3 were described as journalists. In a public statement, the BBC said they were just eyewitnesses, but the dossier refutes this, saying most viewers would consider their hundreds of appearances to amount to the role of a journalist, one who is almost a part of the corporation's reporting team. And their list of concerns goes on and on. But there's one overriding theme that underlies all of them, and it can be best summarised in 2 short and damning quotes in the dossier. It reads, "It is hard to conclude anything other than that BBC Arabic's story treatment was designed to minimise Israeli suffering and paint Israel as the aggressor." And slightly later on it says, "Claims against Israel seem to be raced to air or online without adequate checks, evidencing either carelessness or a desire always to believe the worst about Israel." So, whatever your thoughts may be on Israel's actions in Gaza, how can we expect anyone to develop an informed or nuanced opinion when the BBC is only presenting them with some of the facts?